And welcome to QI, the show that refreshes the parts other shows don't even have names for. Tonight, I'm glad to say we've got names for 4 parts already. They are Barry Cryer, Jeremy Hardy, Jeremy Clarkson and Alan Davis. The rules are sensible, the questions are indispensable, the panel is incomprehensible, and the scoring is completely indefensible. Let's get started. Jeremy goes... and Barry goes... and Jeremy C goes...
He's got mine.
and Alan goes... There we are. Good. So, first some questions...
They're all car-related, weren't
they seem to be. There's a theme there, well picked up. So first, some questions about Britain. Which British profession is down to its last 15 people?
15?
15 practitioners. Jeremy,
Bear-baiting referees.
Not bear... No. Well, let's hope there are none of those.
Are there any bears in Britain now?
In zoos only, I believe.
Do you remember Hercules, the bear? Do you remember? He was a TV star. He mauled a television presenter.
And he's here tonight.
Thanks. I remember Jeremy. There was a Jeremy, big 2 Jeremys here. Jeremy, who was the Sugar Puff bear. You don't meet many American Jeremys, do you? Have you ever met an American
No, it's
Jeremy?
too complicated. There's 3 syllables. Is it people who make windmills?
No, it's a
There
peculiar
are
job.
15 adult practitioners.
15 registered professionals. I suspect there are many more amateurs.
Teachers.
Town criers.
Town criers, no. Though the voice does come into this.
The voice comes into...
I was going to say
talking
commode
one.
services, but...
The voice.
There used to be
voice.
lots more of them.
They use their voice professionally. There used to be 400 or so about in the 1950s.
In the
not
50s?
town criers.
Yeah. Their name means stomach talker.
Ventriloquist.
Ventriloquist is the right answer.
Well, they usually said stomach.
There are now only 15 ventriloquists. And Keith Harris, so I suppose that's 16. No. No, there are only 15 professional ventriloquists left in Britain. Did you know any?
Who fell off the roof?
I saw a topless vent recently.
Really?
Hang on,
Never
like
saw a
the
lips
puppet
move.
or the act.
Who was the one? Was it the radio one who was hopeless?
Peter Brough.
Peter Brough.
He was wonderful.
It didn't
But
matter,
his
though,
lips
did
moved
it?
all the time.
Yes.
He's on the radio, Stephen.
I know, but he did do stage performances. The point is, he
stood right at the back of the stage.
No, he became so popular, it all went to his head.
It was based on
and he
him.
went onto stage and just spoke like this, you know, you could see his lips.
Beryl Reid was in Educating Archie, this show. And Peter was a nice man. He got very self-conscious about his lack of skill. And he said, Beryl, do you ever see my lips moving? And she said, only when the doll's talking. Ken Campbell does a show about it, doesn't he?
Yes.
A whole show about ventriloquism, which he reckons is one of the oldest arts ever.
How do they know it's one of the oldest jobs in the world?
Supposedly, prostitution, of course, is the oldest profession.
How do they know
Yes.
Well, quite. It's just, that's its sobriquet, isn't it? The oldest profession.
that? I never... Yeah.
Yeah.
You never know how they know.
There was a
quite.
time when there were only
Midwife.
prostitutes and ventriloquists
Yeah.
kicking around. Everyone else was self-sufficient, like Tom Clark.
Well, they were divided into 2, those whose lips moved and those whose lips didn't move.
I think that's funny, but I'm not sure why.
There are, however, 280,000 heroin and crack addicts in Britain.
Have they really?
Yeah.
Oh, I've just spent the weekend in Amsterdam where I combined the 2.
Oh, well done.
Drugs and prostitution. The rule book for Dutch prostitutes is that thick. It's an inch thick of what you can and can't do.
I bet they can do something with that, though, can't they?
I went into a brothel on Saturday.
You heard it here first, folks.
It was exactly like the motorway service station lavatory.
But that was a welcome
The
break.
smell...
You don't deserve that kind of luck.
You don't deserve it.
So, how many crack and heroin addicts? 280,000.
280,000, yeah. But this is worse. There are 50,000 practitioners of alternative medicine.
There are 75,000 people in prison.
Oh, yes, it was announced today, actually, wasn't it? Yes, thank you. Very good, have a point. There are 10,000 practising druids in Britain.
They're not all Welsh,
No.
are they?
No.
From Somerset.
That's the kind of area. It's the Archbishop of Glastonbury and Stonehenge, whose name is Rollo Morfling.
Rollo Morfling.
It's spelled M-A-U-G-H-F-L-I-N-G.
It sounds like a practice, doesn't it?
Does.
You are charged with Rollo Morfling.
I only morphled one, sir. So, what is a Birmingham screwdriver?
Yes. A drink.
Oh, Barry, oh, Barry, oh, Barry, oh, Barry, oh, Barry, oh, Barry, oh, Barry.
Can we go on to say what we think might be in the drink?
Yes, if it were a drink.
Wine. W-H-I.
Ooh, de Brummie's wine, then.
Oh, if Einstein had been from Birmingham, no one would have taken the theory of relativity seriously. I mean, Nigel Mansell was from near Birmingham. That says it all, doesn't it? Huge ferret, everything drooping. Crossed the track in front of me, I never saw You've won!
You've won?
£1 billion and a yacht! No, not a very big one there.
No, I'm sorry to all our viewers who are from Birmingham, but what Birmingham? The other name?
I'm not.
Yeah. Brummagem is an old word for hence brum, and Brummagem ware is a type of sort of counterfeit tacky stuff was known as Brummagem ware, and Birmingham workers were considered a bit oafish, shall we say? So a Birmingham screwdriver might well be.
A hammer. Or
Exactly, well done, a hammer. Exactly. They see a screw and think, oh, sorry, I'll just hammer it in. Yeah, they can't be bothered to.
In the 1970s, if you went around all the Birmingham housing estates when they all used to work for British Leyland, everybody's bathroom was maxi green, and the front marina beige.
Yes.
All the paint shop paint was just taken home, and everything was painted in car colour. And it was at a period when orange was popular.
It was indeed. Those
burnt orange
Allegros.
sitting rooms.
The Allegros were orange, weren't they?
The Allegro, I'll tell you something good about that, it was more aerodynamic going backwards than it was.
That was gorgeous.
That was a Birmingham product.
They have some colourful sayings. I have one here. He'd skin a turd for a farthing.
There was the folklore about Enoch and... Excuse my voice, I had Ruby Wax on the phone today. Fell off twice, but what... Enoch and Eli...
Yes.
Two legendary folklore characters from Birmingham. And Enoch's fishing by the canal, and his mate Eli comes up and says, have you caught anything? He says, I caught a whale. He said, where is it? He said, I threw it back. He said, I caught a whale and I threw it back. Why? Hadn't got any spokes in it.
It's like the Nobby Holder joke. You must know that one, don't you? Nobby Holder of Slade. There's a sort of reunion. As the 70s and glam rock's becoming fashionable, and he goes to a costumie and says, you know, I can't, you know, I've thrown out all my old gear, my hat and everything, I can't remember what I wore. And the fellow says, oh, well, we'll give you some loons. You have oh, yeah, I wore loons, that's right, yeah, dead choice that I wore loons. So he puts the loons on, and he says, and what are them tank tops do you want? Oh, yeah, I'll have a tank top. And the fellow says, and what about a kipper tie? He says, oh, thanks, yeah, milk, no sugar.
Ozzy Osbourne.
Yes, Ozzy Osbourne's from that neck of the woods.
Loads of them.
Oh.
I've fallen off me quad bike.
All right.
That was Jimmy Savile.
Jimmy Savile. Jimmy Savile doing Ozzy Osbourne.
I think Jimmy Savile invented hip-hop, because the tracksuits, the jewellery...
The bling-bling.
The bling-bling, it's all... Like, now then, with my hoe in the hood there...
Very good. So there you go. Now, let's have a question which is not about Britain. Who has the least use for Jeremy Clarkson? What two things come to mind when we think of Jeremy?
Top Gear and Brunel.
Cars and television is the key.
So it's a place that's got no...
A place that has almost no cars and no television would have very little use. Yes.
Sark.
Sark, you're quite right about traffic there, but it does have a lot of television. I mean, it has as much television as any other place.
Is it the Channel Island area?
It's not the Channel Islands, it's a lot further away. Yes, Chris.
Bhutan.
Bhutan is the right answer. Well done. It is the kingdom. You've certainly got a point there.
Except... they have got television.
In 1999.
Yeah. It's where they're doing all the television surveys to find out, has television actually had an effect? It's completely wrecked the place. It's absolutely ruined it. It's gone from people going all day to just sitting around stabbing one another, wearing perfume and drinking Coca-Cola and wanting to be American.
And parking fees have now been introduced as well.
In
for the first
Bhutan?
time. It has no traffic lights in the whole of the kingdom.
Where is it?
It's sort of between China and India in the Himalayas.
India has no speed limits.
India has no speed limits.
And every car in India, within 5 years of it being bought, will be involved in a fatal road accident.
The UK, on the other hand, has the highest number of car thefts in the world.
My motorbike was stolen 2 weeks ago.
Bummer.
It's a black Suzuki DR60. N441 YKP.
You should do the whole police press conference bit and say, now this bike thief knows who he is.
I've got an American cousin who's a doctor, and he was visiting me in London at the time when I used to ride a motorbike, and he didn't know this, and we were meeting in a restaurant. He saw me checking in my skid lid, as we biker boys call them.
Helmet,
and he said, "Oh, I didn't know you rode a bike." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, do you know what we call bike riders at the the trauma department of the Roosevelt Hospital?" I said, "No." He said, "Donors." That was one thing. And then, literally 2 days later, a friend of mine was talking about her aunt, who was at Moorfields Eye Hospital, and she was going to have a cataract operation or a corneal graft or one of those things. And the chap came in, the consultant, and said, "No, Mrs. Alton," he said, "I'm sure you've heard about it. We're going to cut out that nasty old lens, that cloudy old lens. We're going to sew in a nice, bright, fresh new one. It's a very simple operation. It only takes a few hours and you'll be out and you'll be seeing wonderfully." He said, "The only trouble is, I'm afraid, we don't have any donor eyes in at the moment." But he looked to the window and said, "But it's raining, so it shouldn't be too long." Actually meant it. Most people in Bhutan live more than a day's walk from a road. It's a very rural country indeed. Only 0.01% of the country are on the internet, for heaven's sake.
No, but if you got that from the internet, it'll be wrong.
Yeah.
Yes.
Every single one of the 247 billion facts on the internet is wrong.
Funnily enough, although the country's domain initials are .bt, it only has supposedly about 6,000 telephones in the whole country, and only went on the telephone in 1980.
Do you know the one about the only two democracies have ever declared war on each other?
Oh, that's good. No, I don't.
In the whole of human history.
Well, Britain's one of them.
Yeah, of course it is. We've been in every single war.
We're always
Obviously us.
Go on, then.
Finland.
Oh.
Second World War. When they declared war on Russia, we declared war on them, and they were a democracy. But it's the only two times that democracies have ever declared when no shots were fired.
We declared war on Finland?
Yeah, because they were fighting Russia.
How did we get on? Did we beat them?
No, we never went. We never even went.
We never even went?
We never even went. We're at war with you.
That's a rubbish war.
It was the worst war in the world.
Here, which is the odd one out from these four? Cuckoo, ferret, grasshopper, camel. Jeremy.
Camel's the only one you can't get down your trousers.
Is it anything to do with their attributes? Or is it going to be something that people do to them or with them or something?
No, yes, something you do to an animal, certainly. Very basic thing.
Them?
Eat, yeah.
You can eat all of them.
You can eat all of them, but
eat a ferret, though,
there are certain classes of people who lay down laws about eating.
The Queen has been invited to eat them and has declined. My husband will try that one.
If you've had a little snip, here, what are you?
You're impotent.
You're Jewish!
Leviticus.
Leviticus is exactly the right answer.
Moses, in which the laws are laid down.
The dietary laws are known as kosher laws, exactly.
And you can't eat shellfish.
You can't, well, yes, not one of... There isn't a shellfish up there.
No, but you can't. I'm just saying...
That's certainly true. Or pork,
that without fins nor scales in the water shall be an abomination unto you.
Indeed, indeed.
Also, that's where it says you mustn't be gay.
That's right.
And
it's odd, isn't it, how many fundamentalist Christians carry on eating pork?
I know.
While going on about God-hating gay people. Yeah.
And seafood you can't eat.
That's right.
Especially winkles, obviously.
Because that's two for the price of one, isn't it? Yeah. No, it's actually grasshoppers. All those other three are specifically mentioned in Leviticus.
Kosher.
But grasshoppers you can eat.
Oh, right.
They're not mentioned. They're exempt. You can eat a grasshopper, but the others are... I'll give you a list, if you like. It actually says in Leviticus that you cannot eat lobster, crabs, frogs, chameleons, eels, hares, snails, lizards, moles, ravens, ospreys, vultures, swans, owls, storks, herons, bats, pelicans, lapwings, prawns and eagles. But...
So Thomas Larter's OK?
Yes, absolutely. Thank God for that. And eagle pie. Yeah.
Oh,
and
I thought I was in trouble from it.
Can you have cheddar?
Yes, it doesn't specifically mention regions of countries it didn't know about.
Well, it's being pretty precise about some
Can't have
stuff.
cheddar with grasshopper.
Yeah.
You said eagles.
Eagles. Yeah.
You know that about the guy who shot a golden eagle?
No.
Preserved species.
Yeah.
And he was in court in front of a magistrate. And the magistrate said, this is a dreadful thing. He said, I never intended to. I was shooting pheasants and it flew into my line of fire. Complete accident. So the magistrate said, OK. And he said, as a matter of interest, what did you do with it? He said, I ate it. The magistrate said, good God, what did it taste like? He said, rather like swan.
Because they're all going to be killed by those wind turbines, aren't they? You might as well eat them then.
Yeah.
I don't think they use turbine. It all has to be done humanely.
Yeah.
I don't think they do it on purpose.
They have to give it. They have to stun it first, and then they throw it up into the turbine.
What's Leviticus? What does that mean?
It's a Latinisation of the Levi, which is a type of priest in the...
It's also the name of our fourth puppy.
Oh.
A puppy called Leviticus.
Yeah.
Oh, what a good name.
And what does the puppy
Well, it was
eat,
the
for God's
third,
sake?
actually, because it was Genesis, Exodus and Leviticus, and then we ended up with Numbers.
Yeah. There you go.
You always called your pets, didn't you? Gilbert and Sullivan and Bubble and Squeak, and you always ended up after a road accident with Gilbert and Squeak. I mean, you always ended up with...
Whiskey and pepper.
Yeah, whiskey and pepper. So true. So true. I did have two guinea pigs, Gilbert and Squeak. That is true. And
How would
Numbers.
two guinea pigs get involved in a road accident?
No, speeding.
Do you know the Roadkill Cafe? I think it's in Wyoming, so somewhere around the Badlands of America. It's called the Roadkill Cafe, and the idea is if you knock anything over in your car, you take it in, they'll cook it. And I love the, you know, whether it's an elk or a tiny little possum or something.
An old lady.
But their poster is... Yeah, absolutely. But their poster, which is all over Wyoming, all over the main road there, is the Roadkill Cafe, from your grill to ours. Anyway, so they'd love that.
What are those birds called in Australia? They're huge things. I mean, they can fly. They're not. It's not like
Michelle.
Emus.
You sort of know they can
Rayas.
fly. They're great big kind of
Rayas.
flying... No, they're flying things. Anyway, they fly down in the night and they gorge on these animals that have been run over the roadkill in the night. Kangaroos. They get taken by the road train.
Sort of animals, yeah.
And then when the road train comes along in the morning, the next one that comes along, these things have eaten so much they can only take off into the wind. And if the lorry's coming towards them as they're taking off, they're usually at windscreen height. Really, really unpleasant, because they are full of magnets.
Double magnets.
And they just come through the windscreen and burst all over. Oh, Jesus, I can't... And they have to drive the next... And, well, straight 100 million miles covered in maggots.
Our team wants you to know, Jeremy, that it is the wedge-tailed eagle. Anyway, why does this man like being bald?
Because it makes him look like a comical Cold War Bond villain, rather than the Butcher of Grozny, for example.
He is the Butcher of Grozny, if you want to call him that. In other words, it's Vladimir Putin, who was extremely annoyed and apparently hit someone when it was his resemblance to Dobby the house elf in the Harry Potter film. He got very cross indeed.
Lenin was bald. Is he trying to something...
Now, you're on the right lines, but take it further.
Gorbachev?
Gorbachev was also bald. But what about the ones in between?
Andropov dropped dead while he was president.
Andropov died on the toilet.
That was Elvis.
Oh, yeah.
Bramwell Bronte, the brother of the Bronte sisters, died standing up, leaning on the mantelpiece after lunch. Just thought you ought to know that.
When they came down in the morning and he was still there.
No, there is for 120 years, there has been a succession of leaders of the Russian state, or the Soviets, who have alternated between being hairy and bald. From Alexander in 1881 through Nicholas, Lenin was bald, Stalin had a full head of hair.
Khrushchev
was bald. Brezhnev was hairy.
Yeah.
Andropov was bald and Chernenko was hairy and Gorbachev was bald and Yeltsin was hairy, and now we have a bald one. And the Russians take this very seriously. And it is considered a contributory factor to his winning the elections, is that he's bald, because it's time for a bald leader.
So next time it's Brian May out of Queen.
Yes, that's right.
Is that me?
It's general ignorance.
I don't remember that being taken. I must have been... What a swell party that must have been.
Now, fingers on the buzzers. Which war killed the highest proportion of British soldiers?
The American War of Independence. Good guess.
Yeah.
English Civil War.
The English Civil War is the correct answer.
Because everybody killed in the English Civil War was British.
Well, that's absolutely right.
So they must be.
Plus, it was an exceptionally bloody conflict
Very
anyway.
violent.
And the population of the country was quite small.
And all anybody knows about it is the hairstyles. All anybody says, oh, it's Roundheads and Cavaliers. And you think, yeah, that's it, really. One lot looks like the Grumbleweeds, the other lot like Lawrence Llewellyn Bowen, so it all kicks off. That man's got a wooden leg and riding side saddle.
Apparently, 90% of Britons cannot name a single battle of the English Civil War. 80% do not know which English king was executed by Parliament. And 67% of schoolchildren have never heard of Oliver Cromwell.
Good.
As a royalist, do you think his name should be buried?
No, he's a dreadful
He was
man.
a-
He
he
was
was
a
a-
truly, truly horrible, one of the most horrible people ever to have walked the land.
But you wouldn't know that if you didn't know about
He
it.
did terrible damage being a Puritan. He wrecked all our beautiful churches because he ripped away all the iconography and graven images and replaced them with the giant thermometers that you can still see to this day.
So how many British people died in the Civil War, then?
85,000 on the battlefield, another 100,000 dying of their wounds afterwards. People who really suffered were the Irish, of whom it's estimated half the population were decimated by the great Cromwell. And it's an example, a friend told me, who works at the Foreign Office, that dear Robin Cook, when the Labour Party came to power, and they were going to be all ethical, we're going to be all good, they took down some picture in the Foreign Office of a Nepalese prince because they thought it was all imperialist, which deeply offended the Nepalese government. And they put up this big portrait of Cromwell, you know, Republican, you know, sort of lefty figure. And the first meeting they had was with the Irish government. Took one look, and it was like showing Eichmann to the Israeli ambassador. In the 7 years between 1642 and 1649, in the period known as the English Civil War, a staggering 1 in 10 of the adult male population died, more than 3 times the proportion that died in the First World War, more than 5 times the proportion that died in World War II. Now, how much of the Earth is water?
2/3.
Oh, wallany. Is not the right answer. I'm counting the whole planet as it is.
Ah, well, no, nothing, virtually.
Quite right. The answer is less than a 50th of 1%. 7/10 of the Earth's surface is covered in water.
About
There's no question
2/3.
about that. Which is about 2/3, which is exactly right. But the Earth is big. It's very, 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 very big.
It's not that big compared to Jupiter.
No, but...
I raise you Jupiter. The Earth can go into the spot on Jupiter. Do you know what I think is a bad idea? Humans spreading onto other planets and into other galaxies. That'd be the bad idea. We should stop ourselves.
Why?
Because we're just bad.
What way are
No,
we
we are. As a species, we're bad. Don't start giving me Shakespeare's sonnets.
Well, you're giving
We're
me...
wicked.
Carl Sagan said a rather wonderful thing when they sent out one of those early Mariner probes or whatever, the one with a gold slab on it with digital information, as a binary information.
Voyager.
Voyager, that's the one. It had information about where the Earth was in relation to the solar system and so on. And someone suggested having some digitised music on a very early semiconductor sort of microchip. And someone said, well, what if we could have some Bach? And Carl Sagan said, I think that would just be showing off. Very good.
That left in when, the late 70s?
Yes.
That's only just got to the edge of our solar system.
But it had to get the special connecting bus service from Crewe.
Broke down.
Absolutely. Well, the Earth may be too small for Alan, but it's big enough for most of our purposes. It has a total mass of about 6 billion kilograms. Even on the apparently watery crust, the mass of the land is 40 times greater than that of the oceans. Anyway, changing the subject to something perhaps a little different. Describe Andy Warhol's underpants.
Padded.
Padded? Padded pants. Any
15 minutes of foam.
thoughts? very good. It's like the Essex girl who sees an Irishman with his Wellingtons that have L&R written on them.
Yes.
And she says, "What's that about?" And he says, "Well, you know, it reminds me of the left put on the left and the right is put on the right." She says, "Oh, that's why my pants say C&A then."
What an interesting audience. No wonder you're so bored about the Earth stuff. I just want some knob gags.
If you were attacked by Andy Warhol and you were describing him to the police and they were doing an artist, the guy just wouldn't believe you, would he?
Well, Warhol, he never went to funerals, except recently, of course. But he never attended funerals. He never danced, ever. And he always wore underpants of a particular colour.
Brown.
We'll have to go through the colours, wouldn't we? It's actually
Blue, green, black, yellow.
You said it. You said green, and green they always wear.
He always wears green pants.
Or wore green pants, exactly. And one last British question. What colour was Robert Burns' kilt?
Red? I don't know.
No, it wasn't red.
He didn't wear a kilt.
You're absolutely right. Barry gets the point. There's a particular reason why Burns would not have worn a kilt.
He was embarrassed about the size of his penis.
No.
Really bad eczema.
Dandruff on the shoes.
wasn't Scottish.
He wasn't a member of a club.
It's nothing like that.
He wasn't a member of a specific clan.
No, he was a member of a clan, but he would be deported from Scotland for wearing a kilt. It was outlawed.
Ah.
Yes.
When was that, then? When was Burns alive?
He was alive in the 18th century.
And you weren't allowed to wear a kilt in the 18th century?
No.
Because it was a symbol of Scottish defiance.
Well, there were two famous rebellions, the 1715 and the 1745 rebellions.
Of course.
The Jacobite rebellions. In which the old pretender and the young pretender attempted... And, of course, in the case of 1745, they got as far south as
Grimsby, Cleethorpes.
Derby.
Derby?
Yeah.
What happened at Derby? The buffet car ran out of beer or something?
Which means we apologise.
Right, we're going back to Scotland. Yeah, that's straight rule, I tell you.
Interestingly, he was never known as Robbie or Rabbi Burns. No. He never referred to himself as that.
Burns.
Sometimes Rab.
Burnsy.
Robert. Burnsy, occasionally. The Burnster.
Burns, my star.
Yeah. It's time for the final scores. Oh, very interesting indeed. Well, in equal last place, it's Barry and Alan with -6, because you both fell into our traps, unfortunately. With 3, it's Jeremy Hardy. Way out in front, Jeremy Clarkson with +5. That is all from QI this week. From Alan, Barry, the two Jeremys and me, a Brobrich Munlich nicht hier all. Good night. Thank you very much.